You know, feeding animals is expensive, and it takes a lot of time and energy, but I wouldn't have it any other way. My favorite day is the day that I get to feed insects to all my reptiles, and that's today. From Frankie to Diamond and even our newest animal, Brandon, we're gonna be feeding thousands of crickets, hornworms, silkworms, and even some rodents too, because feeding day is the best. Upstairs, we've got probably 20 reptiles that we have to feed too, and a great way to create a relationship with your animal is to feed them off of tongs or with your fingers if you're braver. But the mountain horn dragons are really chill, really calm, and this is a great way that you can bond with your animal, so let's open them up. So the idea is just grab them like that, and then sometimes they'll miss, that's okay. Some people like to use wood or maybe even rubber tongs because they're afraid that they're gonna hurt the teeth, but they should be all right. This one here, his name is Pluto. So Pluto, he's the one that's always a little bit more boisterous or out all the time, where some of the other ones we can't really feed off of tongs. I wonder if we'll eat the dead one. I'll just give him a second.
What are you gonna do now?
Oh.
I'm enjoying the party.
Oh, there's Mars. With these animals, they'll come out for food, so you're creating a trust with them that they know that you're okay. You're using food in the same way that you'd use to treat a dog, and if you feed them off of tongs, then they know it's okay. And then eventually you can get them to actually crawl onto your hand or onto your shoulder, and that's what you're going to do to get them to be sociable. And you can do this with many different species, not just mountain horn dragons. This is just the easiest one to show you, and I wanted to show you this one first. The collared lizards are super fun to watch because they're so tiny and they just dart around, and then they just stand still and sit and wait, and then they dart around again, and they'll eat so many crickets at the same time. They're just little raptors almost that look kind of like toad faces. They don't look as cool in my opinion as the monitors, but they have the coolest little attributes about the way that they look. We feed them every other day, and sometimes even after one day, they're gonna feel like almost deflated, and then they're gonna bulk up again. It's like watching a balloon fill with water when these guys are eating crickets and worms and everything that we feed them. There are 3 of them in here. One of them has dug themselves a den and burrow and just kind of isn't out. The other 2 are running around constantly looking for the hot spot, going down, taking sips of water off of the droplets when we miss the enclosure, and then we try to drop crickets in as frequently as possible, because the fun part about keeping collared lizards is the way that they act, and the way that you can interact with them is by feeding them. Not the most handleable things in the world, but definitely the most fun to watch. The banded iguanas, sometimes when I open up the door, they'll just run right out at me. They are so familiar with me now. It wasn't like this to start. When I started this process, I would open the door and they would run away from me. Now, even if I don't have food, they come running full tilt, assuming that I have a salad or maybe some bugs. Being able just to reach in there and grab them because they feel so comfortable with me is something that just never ever gets old. Of course, I'm not gonna keep them out for too long because there's still a lot of crickets in there, but a lot of people think that all iguana species are herbivores only. Banded iguanas, like this Tonga banded iguana here, they actually love bugs. Not too much. You don't want to give them too much protein, but they absolutely do need a little bit of protein in their diet from insects, and the majority of their diet is going to be made up of leafy greens, Swiss chard, mustard green, that sort of thing. Martha and Frank have a great time in this 4-foot cube, so it's a huge amount of space. It is so much space for them to run around and chase the bugs. So although sometimes I'll tong feed them just because it's fun for me, most of the time I toss a bunch of bugs in there, I close the door, and then watch them chase around. It's just so much space for 2 tiny little lizards, and to me, that's how I like to keep things. And of course, we realize that Frank, especially as you see here in the macro footage, has a lot of stuck shed on his head. We told the whole story in last week's video right here, which you can watch. So don't worry, it's not neglect. We're working on it. He's going in a bath right after this. If you want to know why, that whole story is in last week's video. Now, the obvious question and comment I'm going to get is, Adam, how much does this cost you to feed thousands of bugs every single day? Well, not as much as you'd think, thanks to today's sponsor, Chewy and Flukers. Honestly, the hardest part and most annoying part about feeding day used to be remembering to go get the bugs and then having to get in my car and then go get the bugs and then bring them home and gut load them. But now they just show up to my door every single week on the same day thanks to AutoShip. Fluker's has the best bugs. Whether it's roaches or crickets or worms, it doesn't matter. The highest quality, the most nutritious, and for an amazing price. And if you want to try Fluker's live feeders right now, if you're a new customer using AutoShip for the first time, we're gonna give you 35% off your order. This chore doesn't seem like a chore, and that's all because of Fluker's. Thanks to Chewy for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to feeding. Our newest animal's name is Brandon. Brandon the blue tree monitor. He's a lot smaller than Stitch, if you remember Stitch, and feeding Stitch was really fun. This animal eats really well. We've only had him for a few days now, so we're gonna try worms instead of mice because tree monitors don't really need that many rats or mice. They want things like day-old quail, which he's too small for now. So let's try a blue worm because if you are what you eat, and he's blue and the worm is blue and he seems just completely uninterested all the way around. So let's switch the color of the worm and try a silkworm. Silkworms have a great nutrition profile in them, where hornworms are mostly for hydration. The silkworms are really good, not as a staple, that would be crickets and mealworms and things like that, but he doesn't seem very interested in that either, so he's a healthy size and we do want him to grow, just not too fast. Not all the animals are gonna eat for you every single time, but I've got two on either side, the frilled dragons, and I can almost guarantee they're gonna eat for us. To my left is Luigi. This is the male. You can tell because he's got that very long frill that goes down to his elbows. So first we're gonna feed him some worms. He's got a blue hornworm, absolutely loves these. These again are for hydration. These animals don't like it as humid as the other animals, which is why their enclosures look a little bit sparse. They're going into the 6-foot tall enclosures. Actually, it's a 4-foot cube that they're going into. The weekend after next, we're building these enclosures. We did a whole reptile room tour, which you can watch right here, and I explain what we're doing. These guys are getting their own enclosure in there, and then we're going to separate them for feeding. So Luigi here is a monster with food, but as you can see, he's also a bit of a psychopath, and he's kind of afraid, and he's terrified, and he kind of just runs out of the enclosure, and then across the floor, and then Trish has to go and get him, and put him back in his enclosure, and then he frills up because he thinks you're gonna steal his food. So we just feed him another worm, which he really, really likes. Keep in mind, it's fun to feed them. Just make sure they're done the one prey item before you feed the next one. Like you see here, he's trying to get the mouse so bad, but he's got something in his mouth still, which we didn't realize, so that's why we waited and then tried again. Where on this side, this is Squeegee. Squeegee is the female, shorter frill, which is how you know, although there's other signs like pores on the butt and stuff like that. Daffy's Reptiles. Foddy from Daffy's Reptiles is the one who named them, so it's his fault if you think they're stupid names, but I think they're cute and hilarious. These are Australian frilled, so they're gonna get bigger, especially the way that they're eating right now at about a year old, maybe a little bit more than a year old. We're gonna feed the mouse first to Squeegee. Squeegee, of course, being a female, is gonna need that extra calcium, and to make sure that she never has an instance where there's no UVB or not enough calcium, because we do want to breed her. That's the point of having this pair of Australian frill dragons. And she loves it. Now, they aren't the most handleable, and they do frill up, and the reason I have it backlit is so that you can see the red on the frill. And then we're gonna feed her a couple of worms, and then we'll drop in some crickets, but either way, these frill dragons are probably some of my most fun animals to feed because they're so dramatic with the way that they take the food. Keep in mind, I don't feed all of my animals just bugs. We're just feeding bugs today. Animals like Snoop here and the other banded iguanas we just talked about, eating salad is their primary goal. However, in the wild, they're gonna be eating bugs on the salad, which is why we feed them that, and Snoop is a really great eater. He'll eat basically anything that we put in front of him. He doesn't blink an eye, he doesn't bat an eye. A lot of the times, animals that you feed bugs to, bearded dragon owners know this all too well, will then stop eating their salad. I don't have to worry about that with Snoop. Snoop is a Fiji banded iguana as opposed to the Tonga banded iguana, so same genus, different species, but one of my favorite animals because he's just so calm and chill. No issues ever with Snoop. He eats basically everything all the time, even when he gives me this side eye like he's doing right now. And then he gets a little bit cantankerous like that when you put your hand in there because he thinks everything is food and he's ready to eat all the time. Diamond is another one that will just eat basically everything. The star of the channel, he eats his greens sometimes, sort of. Sometimes he'll take his greens and just use them as a toilet, which is fine too, I guess. But he'll eat bugs, he eats mice sometimes. Every worm that you could possibly get your hands on, he's gonna feed on too. Because bearded dragons, the entire idea is you want them to be easy. And what's easy is getting the same bugs all the time and you don't need to change the diet. What I don't recommend is feeding a bunch of hard shell worms like superworms and like mealworms. Mealworms do not eat their way out of bearded dragon stomachs. I don't know how this rumor ever got started. It is absolutely 100% not true, but they do have a tougher time digesting them, and prey items with bodies that are a little bit softer are generally better for bearded dragons. So we feed them some silkworms, we feed them some hornworms, the blue ones, and then of course we feed them some mice sometimes just to give them a little bit of a treat. Sometimes I'll just dump the crickets inside the salad bowl, and that way during the beginning of the day, he's got lots of time to hunt them down, and then the ones that get away from him just go eat the salad. So they're kind of gut loading after I've already gut loaded them, which is great because what you want in your bearded dragon is the best nutrients, and the way you do that is by gut loading your feeders. Over the course of the years, I would say Diamond has probably eaten millions of crickets. Millions and millions of crickets since I've had him. I feed him, I don't know how many every single day. I probably just dumped about 70 in there. Okay, maybe not 70, maybe like 35 or 40, and then I'll feed him again tomorrow, and I'll wait a day and feed him again tomorrow. Either way, feeding Diamond never gets old, whether it's from tweezers, whether it's from my fingers, whether it's in slow motion or regular. It's just really fun to watch and film, and feeding bearded dragons never gets old. Even if bearded dragons are the boring pet that everybody has, I promise you, if you get one and you take time to feed it, it'll still be as fun the 100th time as it was the very first time. Tilly is one of my favorites to feed because this is a big Indonesian frilled dragon. We started him off with some hornworms. He likes the hornworms. They kind of gush, they're dramatic, they're fun. After the worm, we're gonna feed him a mouse. And the reason we feed him mice is we do this every month just to keep up the calcium, which of course he gets the supplementation from the powder, but it's just better in general to have a skeleton. Although pinkies don't have crazy robust skeletons, it does help, and it's a little bit of enrichment for them to have something a little bit different too. And as much fun as it is to tongue feed these animals, which is great, and you're building trust, and you're building some sort of responsibility to feed these animals by hand, and it feels good for you and for the animal. Also, it's fun to watch them hunt, which is what we do with the crickets. We drop the crickets in, we let him go, and let Tilly do whatever he wants. You can see him kind of side-eye, and it's fun too. Throughout the course of the day, he'll dart around the enclosure, which is why it's so important to feed these guys as early in the day as possible for diurnal animals. That way, they have all day to chase them, to look for them, and then once they eat them, they get a chance to bask. Because what happens is if you get a little bit of a night drop and they eat right before bed, those bugs sometimes not start to decompose, but they don't really metabolize as well as if you fed them earlier in the day. So always feed your bug eaters that are diurnal early on in the day. We haven't talked too much about the Kimberly rock monitors, although they're probably one of my favorite animals that I have in the collection. We're building them a giant, like 450-gallon enclosure. For now, they're in this 5-foot enclosure, because I do need to quarantine them. I've only had them for about a month and a half, and I've never tried to feed them off tongs before. They're a little skittish. They're not the most outgoing of the animals that we have. It's like, no, I don't think so. He's pretty chill, this one. 2 of them are a little bit more skittish, and then the one is like a little bit more calm. Sometimes the feeder is what gets them excited or not excited. Not all my animals, even of the same species, will like the same feeder, so we're gonna try a little pinky mouse. So these are frozen thawed. They came to me like this, so I didn't, you know what I'm trying to say. So these guys, let's see if they'll take them off tongs. If not, that's okay. We'll just put them, well, I can see your little nose down there. No. So keep in mind, the top of these bricks are 124 degrees, which might seem hot, but I had a Kimberly rock monitor breeder tell me to make it hotter. I had it at 115 and I was told, hey, try to get to 130. So they seem to like it, and they have like a bunch of different spaces in the bricks, so I'm just gonna put them all over the bricks, and hopefully we can see them eating. This one here we were calling Ducky, now we're calling her Delta Echo Charlie for obvious reasons. Sometimes she will take off tongs, and all the other ones we're trying to gain trust too, because Kimberly rock monitors are really smart. I can actually feel the heat radiating out of this thing. It's so freaking hot. You get the picture. We do this with every reptile, and it takes hours and hours to tong feed or throw the bugs in there. What is your favorite way to feed? What is your favorite animal to feed? And should we do a video where we feed all the snakes? Let me know in the comment section below.